Make me a cream tea, Vasilevsky. Hello and welcome back to another Bolts Analysis 2020. I'm your host Chris as we look at the Tampa Bay Lightning in the NHL, and I think you can tell from my general demeanour that last night was a win. A win. Not just any win for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but a win of 7 goals to 1 at Winnipeg against the Winnipeg Jets. Good gracious, if only we played half as well as that against Minnesota. That was much more like it. Wasn't necessarily going to turn out that way to begin with. We kind of had to ride our luck for the first, I'd say, 10 minutes of the game. Winnipeg Jets, everyone knows they've got offense. They've got Patrick Laine, they've got Scheifele, they've got Kyle Connor, all of that coming at you. Vasilevsky had to be on his game. Vasilevsky was on his game. Made a couple of good saves. At the same time, it wasn't exactly a shooting gallery. I didn't feel like we hung Vasi out to dry. It's just he did have to put a bit of work in to begin with. But once we got going, we didn't really look back, and that was the pleasing factor. We didn't just sort of go, oh, maybe 2 or 3 goals would be alright. No, we punished them for every sloppy sort of play they made. First one where it's just at centre and they don't really control it. Andre Platt goes in, drives to the net. They're all focusing on him. He shiftily puts it back to Cirelli, who scores his first of the game. That's 1-0. The second goal is even worse from a Winnipeg Jets standpoint, and I think sort of highlights their main weakness this season. They don't have defence. Not compared to last season. They are really missing Dustin Byfuglien. And I think most teams would. He's an absolute unit. But just overall presence and just knowing where people are. For the second goal, they effectively gave Kucherov and Stamkos a 2-on-0. And Connor Hellebuyck didn't have his best game, but you cannot possibly blame him for that when you're giving him the opportunity to try and, let's try and stop both Kucherov and Stamkos. They were literally going, to me, to you, who wants it? You can have this one, Kuch. There we go. Practically an empty netter. That's 2-0. And the third goal is possibly even worse in a way, because once again it's Palat and Cirelli, and Winnipeg don't learn from the mistakes. They don't clear the zone. They allow Palat to set up Cirelli, who does some nice stick movement to get it past Hellebuyck, and that's 3-0. And that's just the first period. And you could just feel all the energy being sucked out of the MTS Centre. Just not a good night for Winnipeg at all. It could have been, a night for Winnipeg to not only get back in the playoff standings, but actually, I think with a good win, they would have gone above Vegas in the standings, so they would have gone into the first wildcard spot and shunted Edmonton out into the cold, as it were. But instead, it's a defeat. It's a bad defeat because it only got worse. Hellebuyck ended up being sort of pulled because it went to 4-0, 5-0. Kucherov got a goal. Verhaeghe got on the score sheet. The one negative, I guess, was just the fact that we didn't get the shutout, and it was kind of one of those where we could have easily got rid of the puck. We didn't, and Roslovic went, if you're going to give me a goal, I will take the goal. That made it 5-1. The pleasing thing was we didn't sort of, let our heads drop or sort of go, well, we're probably alright at 5-1. We kept on going, similar to how we did against Vancouver. Cirelli gets his hat-trick, Killorn gets on the board. I'm pretty sure that's Cirelli's first ever hat-trick, so well done to him. He had a very good game, as he normally does. He's a pretty, he's not quite up there in the sort of elite level of Kucherov, Stamkos and Hedman, but he's making a name for himself, and he's taking the chances where he gets them. He's having a pretty good season, as is Killorn, who I'm pretty sure is now on 20 goals, so that's a career high for him. And Vasi kept on doing what he does best, just turning the shots aside. Saved 30 out of 31, and a 7-1 win. And where does that leave us? That leaves us still second in the Atlantic. I feel like we should probably just make peace with the fact that that's probably where we're going to end up. It feels like one of those where every time we feel like we're catching up with Boston go, nope, we're going to move a little bit further away. Sorry. So we're 6 points. Was it 8 points? Something like that. I'm going to have to check. I think we're 6 points with 1 game in hand, so we can get to within 4 of Boston, but it's one of those where I feel like unless Boston suddenly have a horrible slump, we're probably not catching them. Not yet, anyway. More importantly, we now have a little buffer over Toronto of 5 points, because we're on 62 and they're on 57. So that's good, and regardless of what happens in Florida's 3 games, they can't catch us. They're on 55, so even if they were to beat Detroit, Minnesota and Chicago, which knowing Florida is a possibility, they'd still be a point behind us and they'd have played a game more. So, pretty comfortable. Looking to tonight, I guess the games we'll sort of be looking at, because we're off for 10 days now, we don't play until the 28th when we're away at Dallas. Toronto have got Chicago, so I guess kind of hoping for a Chicago win there, but my hopes are not high, because it's at Toronto and Chicago are quite leaky. Despite their, obvious offensive prowess. Florida, as we said, we're at Detroit, who nearly got a win last night. Took it to overtime, but still lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins, as I thought they might. So Detroit are still not really doing anything of note. I mean, I will be amazed, to be honest, at this point, if Detroit get anywhere near 40 points, let alone 50. They are that bad. So I'm not expecting any favours from the Red Wings. I expect Florida to win that one. Buffalo are at Nashville, which is a battle of which goal horn sounds most like the other goal horn. If you ever listen to Buffalo's and then to Nashville's, they are very similar. I think the only difference is that Buffalo sort of stops their blast, and Nashville's is just one long continuous. Nashville need to win that one. Probably, well, I'd say more than Buffalo do. I guess there's more expectation at Nashville. Buffalo have got used to not making the playoffs. Nashville really want to make the playoffs, and I think it would be an automatic failure if they didn't, regardless of where they finished up. So that's a big game on both sides. Montreal, there's quite a lot of Atlantic teams playing. Montreal are at home to Vegas, which I can't call that one, just because both teams have been kind of indifferent. Vegas haven't been great, but you would expect them to sort of, kick on with a new coach, even if it is a coach that's sort of, is a bit of a controversial choice. And Montreal, the sort of team that loses at home to Chicago one day and then beat Philadelphia away the next. So I don't know. It all depends on what Montreal feel like. If they actually bring their A game, they can beat Vegas. If they don't, Vegas will wipe the floor with them. It's one of those. Boston, I don't think are playing tonight. I think they're playing tomorrow against Pittsburgh, which should be quite a fun game. Elsewhere in the league, there are quite a few sort of big games. There's New York Islanders at home to the Washington Capitals. That's a big one for the Islanders, who kind of need to sort of get the momentum back, because it's not been a good week. I mean, any week in which you lose 2 games to New York Rangers cannot be a good week for an Islanders fan base. Over in the West, I believe St. Louis and Colorado are going at it again. That's always going to be fun. And there's also in the Pacific the small case of Edmonton Oilers taking on the Arizona Coyotes, which is another big game in a very tight division. Calgary, there's also no all-Canadian clash because Calgary are playing Ottawa, and Calgary as well will look to sort of keep their run going in the Pacific standings, because I think they're first in the Pacific Division despite the goal difference. It's one of those. So I will be looking at those. And I guess in terms of previewing Tampa Bay Lightning games, there are no Tampa Bay Lightning games to preview for a while. So I guess I'll just be looking at the league and sort of how things are shaping up and how sort of results are affecting us. Because we are second at the moment, but it's just a sort of looking at sort of, how are Toronto doing, how are Florida doing, how's the wildcard situation looking, and so on. But until then, this has been another Bolts analysis. So remember, Anthony Cirelli has his first hat-trick. Bring on the hats.